Kלים Perik Aleph Mishnah Gimel. This is a difficult and long Mishnah, and we'll try and do it slowly and explain lots and lots of new terms and ideas. Remember, in Mishnah Aleph and Mishnah Beis, we went through two levels of Avodas HaTumas. The basic level, which was only able to be Metame B'maga. Then we had Nevela, etc., which was Metame B'maga and B'masa, and we explained Masa when we did that Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Lemala Mehen, above the other two levels, we have Boil Niddah, he's next. A Boil Niddah is a man who's had beer with a Niddah, he's Tomei for 7 days, and he becomes an Av HaTumah. He's Lemala from the other two because he's able to be Metame, a Makabel, using the terms we introduced in the last Mishnah, both B'maga and Masa. That means were the Makabel to touch him or to move him, they would be Makabel Tumah. But he has the added power, Shu Metame Mishkiv Tachtoin Ke'elyon. To understand this expression, we have to introduce a new idea, the idea of Medris, otherwise known as Mishkav Moshev. There is a group of very powerful Avodas HaTumas which we'll deal with later on in the Perek. The group of four, the gang of four. They are Zov, Zova, Niddah, and Yoledes. Not only are they Metame B'maga over Masa, but they have the added power that they are also able to be Metame Kelim B'medris. That means if a Kli is a Ro'oi Lemishkav or Moshav, it's made for sitting and lying on, for instance a chair or a blanket or even clothes. And the Zov or the Zova or the Niddah Yoledes put their full weight on that Kli, then they have the power to be Metame that Kli, but not to make the Kli a Rishon, to make it actually an Av HaTumah, like they are. And they will be mentioned later on in the Perek. They also have the power, that group of Zov, Zova, Niddah, Yoledes, that anything above them, even if they don't touch it, or even if they don't move it, just placed above them, a pile of plates or clothes or food or bananas, then although they haven't moved it, they haven't touched it, everything above them won't become the Av HaTumah that I mentioned before when it's underneath them, but will become a basic Rishon HaTumah. That's the rule of Zov, Zova, Niddah, Yoledes. A Boil Niddah isn't as powerful as that. But what the Boil Niddah has, apart from his ability to be Metame B'maga V'masa, the Boil Niddah is able to be Metame, those Kelim underneath him, the blankets and the chairs, as long as it's a Kli which is Ro'oi Lemishkav Moshev, not to make them into an Av HaTumah, like a Zov and the Niddah herself can, but to make them into a Rishon. And that means Mishkav Tachton Ke'elyon. He's able to make the Mishkav, the sheets and the blankets underneath him, Tachton, the ones underneath him, as Tomei Ke'elyon, like the Elyon of the Zov, just like the Zov is able to be Metame all things above him, without Maga or Masa, to be able to make them a Rishon. The Boil Niddah is able to be Metame, those Kelim which are Ro'oi Lemishkav Moshev and are placed underneath him, to be Metame them, to make them a Rishon like the Elyon of a Zov. That's a little bit complicated. We're going to go on. Lemala Mehen, above the Boil Niddah, we have actually now a higher level called Zova Shel Zov. These are the Mayona Shel Zov. These are the fluids that come out of the bodies of a Zov, Zova, Niddah and Yoledes, as we mentioned before. The Zova Shel Zov, the actual white fluid that comes out, which renders him a Zov, that fluid is actually a very powerful Av HaTumah. Rukoi, his saliva, Shechva Zara, his Shechva Zara, Memi Raglav, his Memi Raglaim, and the Dam HaNiddah, and the blood that comes out of the Niddah, Dam of course Me'osa Mokai. These Mayona Shel Zov are able to be Metame B'maga over Masa, and the Mishnah just says Shein Metamin B'maga over Masa, but that's not so strict because Nevela is also able to be Metame B'maga over Masa. What the Mishnah means is that they are stricter than Nevela. Now, they're not actually stricter than a boil nida in the sense that they are not able to be metame mishkav tachton ke'elin, but the lamala mehens mentioned in this perik are not complete absolute lamala mehens. Sometimes they are weaker than the one just mentioned before, but they're stronger in another point, and it's only regarding that other point that the Mishnah uses the words lamala mehen. So what is lamala mehen about these mayona shel zov? The answer is, if you remember, when we learned Mishnah base, we said an avela can be metame b'maga of a masa. But there was a difference. When it's metame b'masa, then the tumah flows through to the begodim and kelim that the man is touching at the same time. However, the Mishnah said in Mishnah base v'chasuchi begodim b'maga, but when a person just touches an avela, the tumah does not flow through to his begodim. Whereas these are able to be metame b'maga of a masa, and not only him, his begodim as well, all kelim and begodim that he's touching at the same moment, become Tomei with him, become a Rishon Tumah, whether he's Mekabel Tumah through Masa or whether he's Mekabel Tumah through Maga. So in that regard only, it's Lamala Mehen from the previous lot. And the Mishnah carries on. Lamala Mehen Merikav. Now again, this needs explanations. We mentioned before that this special group, the Zov, Zov, and Nidav Yeledes, have the ability, if they put their weight on a kli, which is made for Mishkav Moshev, known as Tumas Medris, they are able to be metame that kli, not only to make it a rishon, they're actually able to be metame that kli to make it an av hatuma. In other words, Zov, Zov, and Nidav Yeledes are not only metame b'magav amasa, are you for a person to touch a Zov or move a Zov, but the Zov and Zova and Nidav and Yeledes can also be metame a kli which is royal in Mishkav Moshev by just having their weight on these kelim. Even many blankets or chairs, and they sit on the top one, all of them become Tomei and Av HaTumah. Now that's with Mishkav and Moshev, things made for sitting and lying on. There is a third one called Merikav. Merikav is slightly weaker. Merikav is something you don't sit and lie on. It's something which you sit, but with your legs astride, you straddle it like one would sit on a saddle. It also becomes an Avatuma, like a Mishkav and Moshev. But it has one slight weakness compared to the Mishkav and Moshev themselves. But it's still very chomel. The Merikav is an Avatuma. That means the Merikav can be metame, this saddle, which is Zova sat on, can be metame b'maga. It can be metame an odom b'masa. That means if a man were to move it, he would become tame. It's also metame, says the Mishnah, shu metame tachas even mesama. Even mesama is a heavy boulder, a big rock which doesn't move when you sit on it. And what the Mishnah is saying is that if, for instance, the Merikav was underneath this heavy boulder, and the Makabel, the man, Dafka a man, were to sit on top of the boulder and have his weight pressing down on the Merikav underneath, then although the Makabel, the man, hasn't touched the Merikav, although he hasn't moved the Merikav, but the fact that he sat on the Merikav, even though albeit through an Evan Mesama, he has been Makabel Tuma through Evan Mesama by having sat on this heavy stone. That's the Chumrah of a Merikav. Says the Mishnah, Lamala Mina Merikav Mishkav. Now that's a case with a saddle. However, the Mishkav, which is the actual chair or blanket which Hazov has sat on, is very similar to the Merikav in that the Mishkav, the chair or the blanket, can be metame b'maga. It can be metame b'masa. It can also be metame tachas even mesama, i.e. if the blanket was underneath a boulder and a person, the Makabel, sat on the boulder, he would be Makabel Tumah because the blanket is under an even mesama. But what the chumrah is of Mishkav over Merikav, sheshoveh magoi lemasoi. This means, imagine we have two items, two kelim, which have both picked up tumas medris, by having a Zov sit on them. One is a saddle and one is a chair. They are both Avois HaTumas of Mishkav and Moshev and Medras, Mishkav and Moshev and Merkav. The difference being, both these Avois HaTumas, Merkav and Mishkav and Moshev, are able to be Metame B'maga, to be Metame the Makabel by physical contact, and to be Metame the Makabel, if the Makabel is Odom, if the Odom were to be Noisei, the Merkav, Mishkav and Moshev. But there's a difference. In the case of Merkav, the Tumas Begodim, where the Tumah flows through to any Begodim or Kelim that the Makabel is touching, only happens with Masa, but not with Maga. Whereas in the case of Mishkav or Moshev, a proper blanket or chair, a proper Mishkav or Moshev, then they are able to be Metame, the Begodim and the Kelim that the Makabel, the human Makabel, is touching, whether the Makabel is picking up Tumah through Maga or whether he's picking it up through Masa. And the Mishnah carries on, of course, with the end of this series, of this group. The Ma'ala Min HaMishkav is the Zov himself. We were dealing with a Boel Nida and the Merkav and the Mishkav and Moshe, but they all became Tomei through a Zov. Now we're dealing with the Zov himself. And when we say Zov, we include Zova and Nida and Yeledis. They are the gang of four, the very strict group. Not only are they Metame, they can be Metame B'maga, i.e. if they touch something. They can be Metame B'masa, i.e. if a person moves them or lifts them, then that person and his begodim become Tomei. And not only can they be Metame through Evan Mesama. That means if a rock is placed on a Zov, and Nidav, or on his finger, and a person were to sit on top, he would be Mekabel Tumah by riding via an Evan Mesame on them. They have the added Chumrash Hazov Oise Mishkav Umoshev. They themselves can make another Avatuma like them. They can make the Tumas Mishkav, which we mentioned before. If they were to sit on a chair or lie on a blanket, or the reverse, lie on a chair and sit on a blanket, because this chair and blanket is made for Mishkav Umoshev, by the Zov, Nida and Yeledes putting their weight onto this blanket and Kli, that Kli becomes an Av Hatuma, which we mentioned earlier in the Mishnah. And the Zov has this power. But the chair itself, although it's also mentioned in this Mishnah as a strict Av Hatuma, the chair itself isn't able to make another Mishkov, says the Mishnah. Ve'in Mishkov ois a Mishkov. Once a chair is a Mishkov, although it's a very strict Av Hatuma, it is able to be Metame B'magav Amasa, it is not able to be Metame another chair and make that chair into a Mishkov, because only the Zov, and Nida, Viredes themselves can make a Mishkov.